You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 35, Ascension. Part 1.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Charlene Schmidt.
And I'm Marina Kravchuk. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each one of them special, and see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that we have learned.
This week, we rise to the occasion for Ascension Part 1. Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you haven't seen this episode yet, what are you doing? Go watch the episode. Put us on pause. Then come back when you're done. Then hear us talk all about it right here. We'll be around. We're here.
Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast, so please be sure to engage the like and share buttons and subscribe to us here on Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. And if you listen to the audio-only version, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on X, formerly known as Twitter, at ML_Prodigy, and now on Instagram at Mission Log Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates.
And before we jump into our show properly, let's remind everybody why our podcast is so unique. We want to hear from the cadets, the best part of our show, quite honestly. They are the younger Prodigy fans out there who share their thoughts on the show. And right now, we want to hear what our cadets thought about both parts of Ascension. So if you're interested in doing this, please record a voice message and tell us the following. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn? Then you send the file to missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com, and please make sure it reaches our inbox no later than October 19th so we can put you in.
We have one more thing to discuss before we jump into this week's episode, and that is to tell you all about our giveaway where you can win some pretty good Prodigy merch. Something like, for example, a complete set of Prodigy Cast fanset pins, and that is just one of the prizes that you can possibly win. Head over to the link in the description of this episode for a link to enter. And speaking of which, stay tuned to the end of this video because we will be giving you a secret code that you can find only here in this episode. So with all that said, let's kick things off for this show by answering some of the questions that we ask of our cadets. So, Shar, did you like this episode?
Yes, we are finally answering the question you've been asking for several weeks now. What is Ascension up to? And it turns out a lot. We are back to a two-parter now, and this one is definitely high action, high stakes. Like, just when I think they can't up the ante, guess what? They do. The reveal at the end of this episode.
I know. Watching this season has been not unlike watching a pole vaulting competition. With every single episode, the plank just keeps moving higher and higher. And I loved it. I mean, there's, again, so much story packed into this very short period of time. And also, it's really nice to see something we already kind of brought up in the prior episode. It is very gratifying at this point to see how much our, future cadets become grown-ups. They've matured. It's great to see them really being part of the team in the full sense of the word. They're part of the crew of Voyager.
So much.
Did you have a favorite part in this episode?
Yes, I did. It was Majel inviting Dal to fly with Nova Squadron. I mean, it wasn't just because she was trying to be nice, and it was a nice gesture and all, but she didn't do it for that reason. I loved the reasons why she did it. It's because she sees him as an equal now. She's seen him in action. She sees his potential, and she thinks enough of him and his talents that she wants him to fly with the other best pilots on this ship so that he can be his best. And that's with Nova Squad. And you know what? Maybe they could learn some things from Dal as well. How about you?
I had several favorite moments, actually. The moment between Zero, EMH, and Jankum in sickbay. It's sort of a continuation from all the little moments that we've had between Zero and Jankum before. And it's lovely because you can see, the dejection, the devastation that Zero is experiencing because they know that the body is going. And we have this wonderful moment of hope when EMH quotes Jankum and says, no, we can build better, and explains explains, the solution. So I thought that was very heartening. The fact that, hope is not lost. There is always something there. I love all the JC interactions, which is kind of an obvious thing.
Of course,
especially
yes.
the reminiscence scene, because it kind of like you can see them rebuilding their bond. They haven't seen each other for so long. Probably the highlight is of course, after, like, this is my ship. No, this is my ship. You have Chakotay basically calling out crew, like, yeah, Dal isn't, you want us? And it's like, yes, this was our ship. Who better? So that was just a wonderful, great moment of acknowledgement of Chakotay being a really good mentor. So I absolutely loved it. And yes, of course, absolutely. The Wesley reveal at the end, that was very much a sort of what now moment. But
Right.
we'll talk about this later.
I was going to say, you loved that? I hated it.
No, it wasn't just. I did not expect. Like Ascensia is talking to someone. Like, is she talking to Iltheran? It's like, well, you're not gonna watch what I'm doing here, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
on one hand, it's a combination of a relief because Wesley is not dead. I mean, when Ziggurat exploded, he could have been gone for all we know. But on the other hand,
that's a good point.
Oof, what now?
This isn't very good either, but at least there is some hope knowing that he's alive.
So, what did we learn?
Well, I had to split this up because there were two distinct things that I got from the first half of this episode and the second half. So from the first half, I got that time and change are constants, and it's good to embrace them. And we see that in so many iterations that I can't wait to discuss that later on. In the second half, it's look out for one another. You are all you've got when you're in the far reaches of space. And of course, we know that our crew is just going to kill it in this respect. They always have. This is just a prime latest example of them at work doing this and just demonstrating it.
Oh, I agree. There's a wonderful thing that Dal says in his log in the beginning. He says, when we had nothing else, we had each other.
Bingo.
We again get a wonderful reminder, that something that harkens back all the way to the beginning of the season. Everybody has a role to play. So in this case, we're reminded, yes, everybody does, even if they are in a very diminished capacity. In addition, it's, we have several moments where it's sort of... it's not Dal now. It's more Admiral Janeway. It's like when you have the challenge, so it's something that Dal being a cadet hopeful, and he's facing and learning this the entire season. But we see that Admiral Janeway, as a seasoned commander, kind of has to face it herself, is that when you reach the moment where you have to decide, so like how, when, and whether you actually do decide to step back from a situation rather than go in all guns blazing. Sort of like finding that balance of how do you make that kind of a decision. Again, we'll touch upon that more later.
Yeah, we've really got to break apart the whole thing when Starfleet's orders come down and everybody's reaction to that, because that's so much fun. Well, thank you, Marina, for your answers to this week's questions. But how about before we do anything else, let's get to the recap for Ascension Part 1. This one is written by many people. Aaron McNamara, Jennifer Miro, Deandra Pendleton Thompson, Keith Sweet II, and Aaron J. Waltke. Thankfully directed only by one person, that's Sung Shin. Oh, it's been a while since we've had multiple writers on one episode.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Dal reflects in a personal log how much he and his fellow crewmates have changed as a result of what they've went through to bring Chakotay and the Protostar back to Voyager. It was a lot. Thankfully, they are home, and they have Starfleet to help with the next step, returning the Protostar to Tars Lamora so they can restore the timeline and heal Gwyn. Meanwhile, Nova Squadron candidates are engaged in a holographic training simulation when Dal shows up. Majel invited him. The other candidates are hesitant to welcome him, but they proceed with the simulation anyway. In sickbay, the EMH has some bad news for Zero. He cannot fix the damage to Zero's body. Eventually, it will cease functioning entirely. Zero knew this day would come, but that doesn't make the reality of the situation sting less. Now, for the better news, though, advances in Starfleet technology could give Zero a new artificial body that recreates tactile sensations, the good and the bad. Zero is elated and wants Jankum to oversee construction, so it has Mr. Pogg's touch. In Janeway's wedding room, she and Chakotay are having a moment to themselves as they prepare for a meeting with Admiral Jellicoe. The Admiral is pleased to see the long-lost captain back, but stops Janeway as she explains a plan for creating a wormhole and returning the Protostar to the past. Starfleet will be taking over the mission from here. They cannot afford another crisis, and frankly, Jellicoe has seen how being too close to the situation has clouded Janeway's judgment. He has new orders. Escort the Protostar to Earth. The Department of Temporal Investigations will handle the Protostar. Janeway will return to her desk, and those pesky cadets will be reevaluated. Thankfully, a different crisis needs Jellicoe's attention before he can deliver any more bad news. None of this news sits well with Chakotay, Janeway, or Tysus, but perhaps this is where their part of the journey ends. Upon receiving the news, the cadets discuss it together in the mess hall. After all they've been through, now all they can do is turn the mission over and become nobodies? Not so fast, Dal says. They should be proud of all they accomplished. But it is a big job, and Gwyn's still at risk, so perhaps it's a good thing the Federation is taking the reins. Tysus summons Gwyn to the bridge. It's urgent. They've received a message from a downed shuttle on Solum. It's Iltheron. He's thrilled to see Gwyn and vice versa, but this isn't a social call. Ascensia has been busy building her forces on Solum. She has access to time manipulation technology where, inside a series of domes, months pass, whereas only hours pass outside them. Iltheron doesn't know the full scope of Ascensia's capabilities, but then his transmission is intercepted and Ascensia appears on screen. Now that she knows Voyager's coordinates, she sends a little gift their way. A gigantic Rev-1 ship that begins draining Voyager's energy. Voyager cannot leave due to the power drain, and when the Rev-1 fires torpedoes at the Protostar, the situation becomes critical. Janeway focuses on protecting Voyager, while Chakotay and the cadets will handle the Protostar. On the way to the transporter room, they cross paths with Nova Squadron, who are on their way to mount a shuttle defense per Tyce's orders. An explosion renders one of the Nova Squad candidates, Grum, unconscious, so Zero volunteers to take her to sickbay and assist the EMH with the stream of injured crew needing help. That leaves an opening for a skilled shuttle pilot. Nobody? Chakotay gestures to Dal, who, at the very least, knows how to go fast, and Dal accepts the assignment, understanding that this is where he is needed most. He and Gwyn promise that they'll see each other on the other side. The rest of the crew beam over to the Protostar and take their stations, where they are greeted by hologram Janeway. Gwyn assumes first officer duties, and Murph engages in evasive maneuvers, deflecting fire from the enemy ship. Back in sickbay, a noticeably slow-moving Zero apologizes to Dr. Noam, but Dr. Noam is glad for any and all help. Sickbay is overrun, and their technology can't keep up with the number of those injured. Noam resorts to more old-fashioned tactics as a result. Things don't look much better on Voyager's bridge. It takes secondary power just to bring torpedoes online, but chronometric interference prevents them from locking onto their target. That's where the Nova Squad pilots will come in. Their shuttles are faster, can get closer, and relay coordinates. After they launch, the Rev-1 greets them with her own wave of drone fighters. Falling back is not an option. Or is it? Dal suggests the shuttle pilots lure the drones away so the Protostar can catch a lock. Janeway likes this idea and orders them all to proceed. It works, and Janeway orders a full spread of torpedoes on the weapons array. The drones abandon pursuit of the shuttles and instead connect and form a shield in front of Ascensia's ship so the torpedoes send a nasty shockwave into the Starfleet ship's path. Voyager's a sitting duck, and they're all at Ascensia's mercy. This is bad news because it seems that the source of all of her new toys is none other than her prisoner, Wesley Crusher. And that is where we'll pick up next week.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah, and again,
always,
hats off to the writers because it's great. I mean, why don't we start with some of the observations? And
you've got a lot of lore. Let's start with that.
Yeah, as always, we have wonderful little tidbits. Whether you want to call it fan service or not, but it works because it's very naturally part of the story. It fits, and it also gives older fans a delight to connect Prodigy to greater Trek universe. So the first one that to jump out, the reference to Daystrom Institute, where the development in technology is something that might help Zero, continue experiencing tactile sensations. It's at this point it's mentioned in multiple series, so it's great that Prodigy also has a mention of Daystrom Institute.
They get their turn.
Kind of similar, we have the Department of Temporal Investigations that's supposed to take over Protostar upon, arrival to Earth, which obviously never happens. It first established in DS9, and now, if you remember, there was a wonderful thing that was said that Captain Kirk has the biggest number of temporal violations on file. I kind of have a sneaky suspicion that by this point, Janeway probably has him solidly beat. I don't know if anybody counted.
Else, she's got to be a really solid competitor, because, those two, they're a lot of trouble.
I love, this is probably my favorite deep cut. Watson subspace relays. When Tysus calls Gwyn, he says that they got a signal through Watson subspace relays. This is a reference to Operation Watson, something that was done through Voyager's Pathfinder project, season 6, I believe.
Yes.
When Harry and Seven managed to figure out a way to establish a link between Voyager and Alpha Quadrant so that Voyager would have 11 minutes a day to actually have more or less direct conversation with Earth. This is a delightful thing. This is something that is, again, an established part, and it's specifically part of Voyager lore. So it makes it, like I said, this is probably my favorite reference in this particular episode, Watson Subspace Relays.
It's deep.
Speaking of another deep cut, we again have Jankum again, like when he drops those comparisons. The almond, and whatever else. In this case, he's comparing Voyager being drained of energy to sort of like the situation where you were, you being drained of, your blood, I believe, by the Cronian cloud creature, which is basically like a vampire type cloud entity from all the way from the original series. So this is probably the deepest cut. Something that I appreciated, again, this is not so much a reference as a continuing explanation of how things work, even though I feel we so far reached pretty sophisticated understanding of, what happens on the Starfleet ship. Every once in a while we still get mentions of all the different types of, procedures, protocols, technologies. In this case, as part of the conversation that, we have to get our weapons going, we have to start firing at Rev 1. Basically, as part of the dialogue, Janeway explains how the ship operates in terms of firing weapons. You can't just shoot phasers or shoot torpedoes willy-nilly. You have to have a target lock. And that whole scene not only kind of, illustrates that, but it also shows how a crew works together. It's not just a captain or whoever's in charge of the bridge barking orders, do this, do that.
Right.
You have this conversation where the crew members are offering solutions in order how to serve whatever situation at hand. So I thought that was a lovely thing. Something that is important because as we get closer to the end of the season, we get more and more indications of how it ties into the timeline that we're aware of. Specifically,
Yes.
we have mentions of more tie-ins to Star Trek Picard series. Jellicoe, when he, during his diatribe, mentions the increased reliance of A500 androids and Starfleet
Yes.
being horribly spread too thin due to Romulan evacuation and due to the, Starfleet being attacked by the living construct way back in season 1 of Prodigy. So, all of this kind of, nicely ties in. So we're probably ending fairly close to something that has to do with Picard, I would assume. So it's nice again to see how Prodigy kind of slots into the overall timeline. Other little mentions that we have the Jaeger loop, something that comes all the way from TNG. Chakotay, when he's ordering evasive maneuvers, he mentions pattern Omega 1, which came up originally in Voyager, and then it was reused in Discovery. So this was nice to see again, kind of like illustrating how everything works. The fact that the maneuvers have names and all the other things.
They do. We get a Boothby drop for the
yes.
Boothby
That's right.
supernova formation. We'll have more to say on that, I think, in the next episode.
Yeah, is that a curious thing? The Boothby only appeared like literally a handful of times between TNG and Voyager, and yet he is such a fixture that you get a mention like this, and it's immediately like, yes, of course, everybody knows Boothby.
Right? Yes, it's because he was such a fixture at Starfleet Academy. Everybody knows who Boothby is.
Yeah.
One little thing in lore that I had to take note of was we get another "It's Been a Long Road" reference. Like, I can't help myself.
Yeah.
I won't sing it, but it's in your head now, admit.
Yes, it is. And I also love the fact that we again get a mention of cetacean ops, just to see that it is indeed, the fully working, useful department within the overall structure of the ship. So it's like, cetacean ops is reporting that something is coming, and then of course Red One arrives.
Right, and it's also very nice that we are no longer seeing evil cetacean ops.
Yeah,
we're back to
that's
Jillian.
Very true. Yeah. Thank goodness.
Well, I want to point out just a few fantastic visuals, because I made a few notes in this episode about just that. I love how the opening shot gives us a great perspective of scale in terms of like the Protostar's size versus Voyager A's size. Like the Protostar looks kind of teeny, even compared to Voyager A, which is bigger than the original Voyager, but is probably not the same as a Galaxy-class starship. So it's not like Voyager A is the biggest ship in the fleet, which is interesting. Yeah, and okay, the Rev 1's arrival really reminded me of when the Narada in the Star Trek 2009 movie, when it arrives, and especially with the musical cues, it has that wop, wop, wop. Just, they both are like, ooh, big ship, big and menacing ship.
That's exactly it. I was going to say, like, the menace, because, like, the moment this, claws start to protrude, it was really, really menacing.
They look a lot alike. Yeah, definitely. And then this week's shout out to the art department has to go for the really striking visual of the drones forming into that grid and then activating the shield against the torpedoes, because that was a stunner.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. It made me think of Guardians of the Galaxy. There is a similar shield formed by drones, only whereas there it is a good thing. It's a protective shield. In this case, this is a form of attack because, again, it generates that shockwave that literally is like, we don't know how bad the damage is to Voyager and Protostar after that. Yeah. So,
not good.
Yeah, so here's a question for you. When they mention that, they're getting the signal through the Watson relay, the crashed Starfleet shuttle on Solum, is that the shuttle from the beginning of the season, the one that delivered Gwyn to Solum? Or
it's
was
gotta
that
be.
one? Yeah, because for some reason in my mind it registered that, we see the explosion and the shuttle's probably, that's it, vaporized or something. But perhaps it crashed after being attacked.
Maybe what's left of it? Yeah, good question.
Probably, possibly, just dropped down from the sky. Speaking of Solum, I should say, speaking about that signal, it was a lovely scene, however short it was, where, you can see, again, we're reminded how different Ilthuran is when he's not the diviner. He's so thrilled to see that Gwyn is okay and doing well and everything is fine, and he's being his, scientific, helpful self. And then, of course, when he's captured, Gwyn told his father, it's amazing. It's like, it's great to see that they have that wonderful bond that hopefully will get developed further.
Yeah, agreed. They haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time together, but it's obvious they do love and care for one another. And as short-lived as it was nice to see that for sure. Speaking of things we've only seen just a fraction of, and I hope we'll see a whole lot more, how about those Nova Flyers?
Oh, yeah.
We get the name drop. Tom Paris designed them, a.k.a. Flyboy himself. And so they go fast. That would be a standard feature. And I really think if we do get more Prodigy, and of course we need more, Dal and Tom Paris really need to geek out and maybe go enter a couple of Flyboy races together, because those two would have a blast.
Well, at the very least, we'll have a great discussion about racing, I would imagine.
Trading more stories, maybe.
Something that, as usual, we have some nice levity moments in between all the amazing action. One of the candidates from Nova Squad, Zev, that little dig he has at Grom very quickly is like, oh, cut the chit-chat. Meanwhile, Grom is completely, utterly silent, as she happens to be a Lorian, Morn species from Deep Space Nine,
Right.
who are not exactly talkative.
Nope,
so
just
I
sits at that bar.
Again, I love the fact that it's this very quick reference to something that's already been established, but it's sort of a blink and you miss it moment. And then, of course, we have Jankum. Always. Jankum is guaranteed to always say something that would kind of at least make you go, giggle. When we have intense stuff and Chakotay's being Chakotay's like, we only have one shot at this, and Jankum just goes, oh, don't be so dramatic. And I was like, oh, yeah, so it kind of catches like talking to the captain, recalibrating deflector, captain.
He's trying so hard to be polite in this episode. That was definitely something I noticed. Also, he has slicked his hair back down again. It's not sticking up like it was. It's kind of fun just to see the back and forth on that when like the difference between Jankum trying and Jankum just being Jankum.
Basically.
So this is not a unusual thing, quite honestly, but Janeway talking to Janeway is sort of a thing that happened many times starting on Voyager, and I love that Prodigy has just expounded on this. Like, I think Kate Mulgrew has played more duplicate versions of her character than any other character on the show. I think we've referenced this before, but we do get a nice shout out to the alternate Janeway that helped Voyager get home in Endgame in that scene between Janeway and Chakotay, and I just really love that.
So do I. It's wonderful. First of all, I mean, just generally, again, the fact that you have two Janeways speaking in the same scene, and Kate makes them completely different. You sort of have that moment where hologram Janeway kind of goes like, well, how do I even? Okay, Janeway to Janeway. Just but doubling of Janeway has always worked incredibly well. Yeah, we've had two Janeways in Deadlock, we had two Janeways in Endgame, and now we have all these multiple Janeways in Prodigy. So that is totally a moment to get a kick out of.
Most definitely. I think it's the fact that Kate Mulgrew did so good playing multiple Janeways that they thought, hey, let's make this a thing. Yeah, well, it's not easy work.
The thing is that, it doesn't register that it is the same actor speaking. You completely, there's hologram Janeway talking, and that is Vice Admiral Janeway talking. It does not crisscross in any way.
No. Yeah, it's fun seeing, or hearing, rather, Kate give distinction to these characters. I was thinking more just how way back they played with this in Deadlock, and Kate Mulgrew just knocked it out of the park so good playing two Janeways that they figured they had to do it at least a couple more times. So our reunion with Chakotay and the Protostar once again is subverting expectations by not starting off as really a happy one. And that is the same deal with Chakotay and his welcome home from Starfleet. It's like, hi, nice to see you. Bad news. Thanks, Jellicoe. But on a happier note, you mentioned it earlier, and it is the our ship mantra. Chakotay has really embraced this crew. They are, I won't want to say his cadets, but they're certainly a team. It's like Janeway, Chakotay, and the Protostar crew now. Yeah. And that's how I see it. Yeah, who better to protect this ship with their lives than the people who love it most? And that is our cadets. And it's also great to see Chakotay give a subtle but powerful go where you're needed reminder when Chakotay says to Dal, Starfleet needs you. Go pilot that ship. Go where you're needed, buddy. And he does. He steps up and says, aye, sir.
Yeah. Well, speaking of moments of levity, this whole thing that we've been talking about, everyone has a role. There is a moment where you get a very unexpected, I mean, it's very basic in its sort of statement, but it's a very comical form of everyone has a role. We have that moment in sickbay where Dr. Gnome is treating patients because sickbay is completely overrun by re-injured, and Zero apologizes for not being fast enough to help, and Dr. Gnome just goes, as long as you're conscious, you're helpful. On one hand, it kind of cracked me up. On the other hand, yeah, in this situation, yeah, that's a role that Zero is fulfilling, despite being slower and unfortunately deteriorating themselves. So,
Right. Yeah. And still, I love that line though. If you're conscious, you're still helpful. Yeah. Dr. Noam doesn't get a ton to do, but you know what is used well?
he's used well, and I guess in this particular scene, remember how you and I were wondering, well, wasn't he in charge of sickbay and now he sort of became more of a counselor? No, he is indeed a full, I want to say full functioning, but that's not what I meant, but, fully capable medical doctor, because we see that moment where he's treating and he and the EMH are discussing the fact that osteoregenerators are just literally not able to, heal everybody, which is, again, we have a mention of it's typical Star Trek medical technology, something that heals bones. But we see, sickbay is overwhelmed with the injured. We get this insight, the fact that Starfleet doctors are skillful regardless what technology may or may not be necessarily available. And when the moment comes, they do not hesitate to apply, as you mentioned, old-fashioned methods. We see Dr. Noam kind of grabbing Rome, and whatever is wrong with her shoulder, I'm sure gets fixed.
Yeah, a little bit of old-fashioned adjustments never hurt anybody. Just ask Janeway. That was a couple of episodes ago. Okay, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or is Ascension nothing more than a mustache-twirling villain here? Because here's the thing, is what makes her dangerous here, at this particular point in the story, is her time manipulation toys, not necessarily her. Does that make any sense? Is like she's manipulating time to train her army, which does make me think of the quote, "Hours would seem like days" from Star Trek II. Like, that's actually that quote in action, but it's not so much her as it is she has Wesley as a prisoner, and she has tortured him enough to break him down and do all of these horrible things and give her these toys. So what do you think?
It is one of those things where I think, very bluntly, the ends justify the means in her case. It's basically foods for thought, and I could be reading more meaning into this than there actually is. All the Vaunakot that time traveled in the past have names, monikers. So Iltheron is the diviner, but Ascensia, if you remember, is the vindicator. So,
right.
In modern meaning, that's a person who proves that something is right, reasonable, justified. Now, the word is obviously based on Latin, and if you look in the origins of the words vindicate, vindicator, which before it became more positive in meaning, actually came from a notion of vengeance and punishment. It's the same as the word vindictive. So in this case, Ascensia, a person out of time. I mean, her solemn does not exist technically, but she's so consumed by her goal, she's vindictive in a most sadistic and uncontrollable way. So at this point, we find that she usurped the current day Solom in order to, again, avenge one, depending on how you look at all this timey-wimey stuff, doesn't yet exist, no longer exist, cannot even exist perhaps. I mean, timeline might have changed so much that her Solom might never come about. It does not matter to her at all, because in her mind, Federation is bad, therefore it deserves to be punished, ergo she's justified in her actions, which is, so if you think about this thought, that's very pertinent both in history and in modern world. So she's, perhaps she comes across a little bit too, strictly black and white. She's evil, but still, I think we just only got back in touch. So let's see what happens, in part 2 and at the end of the season. But in this case, I thought it was a curious thing that Vindicator, but the Vindicator who turned completely and utterly vindictive.
Yeah, that's really good thoughts. Thank you for sharing all of that. That does add a little bit of a dimension to it all. And you're right. We have plenty of time to really get into Ascensia. And the real heart of it all for her is that she does not see herself as the villain like all good villains do. And so she is doing what she thinks is right. And so it just came across to me as a little two-dimensional here. Maybe part 2 will help me change my mind, and thereafter as well. But here it's just, look at my toys. Go, Wesley. I don't know. But yeah, thank you again for giving me a little bit to munch on there because I think that's a great way to lead into our discussion. So how about it?
Yeah. Yeah, so as usual, in tradition of Mission Log, we dedicate a great deal of time to discuss some of the finer points from the episodes we review. And again, we look for kinds of morals, meanings, messages that we can discover. So, what did you find meaningful or memorable in this episode?
Well, let's talk about a happy one. And this is a quote from Zero. What is life but not a balance of both? I really appreciate the way Zero takes such a measured approach to the good news, bad news of feeling all the tactile sensations and nevertheless feeling so entirely excited that, yes, they can still feel in a new body potentially. And I think that's a great metaphor for just about anything in life. It's you got to have the good with the bad. Life is exhilarating. Life is terrifying. And the best way of handling it all really is by following Zero's example. And that is just be your true self. You can handle it.
Yeah, that's very true. And I love the fact that Zero is that thrilled to entertain possibilities. I mean, it is still an unknown. And yes, there is a possibility. As the doctor says, the Daystrom Institute developed some technologies that are working in that direction of having artificial tactile senses. But, it's not a given. It's not a guarantee. Yet, Zero being Zero, remember, the curious one, though, they admit being both joyous and terrified, nevertheless, they want to. They think, oh, the life of, new possibilities awaits. Just generally that particular scene, and I mentioned it in the very beginning, I love the fact that EMH quotes Jankum, and Zero wants Jankum to be the one to oversee the project, and you literally see Jankum touched. And it was, such an incredible moment because it's not exactly something that Jankum probably has ever faced when somebody wanted specifically his expertise, not on a purely technical level, but on a personal one. So that It was a lovely thing. So, talk about, well, we were talking about change. So in this case, Zero's embracing change, and there's certainly change for Jankum.
Yeah, and speaking of embracing change, I love the scene in, I guess it's the Ready Room with Janeway and Chakotay. They're
right,
talking
yes.
about how nothing stays the same forever. And this has some great parallels in their own respective journeys, how they've basically gone through time, and time has marched on and much has changed for them. And then yet not, because they've gone through such similar things at the same time. And then there's also little details like the design of a comm badge that have changed a little bit, even if they did get the designs from an Admiral Janeway of an alternate future. So I just found that really, it was a really touching conversation just to see them kind of rebonding, as you mentioned at the top of the show, but also just, they have done so much not together that has been a lot the same, if that makes sense. That's not the most eloquent way of putting it, but
and it's lovely that what you mentioned, that their respective journeys, certainly a lot has happened to both of them, but as the saying goes, the only constant is change, but they also have the shared journey. So even though there is a change there, nevertheless they also still have things that are constant for them. So I love the reference of our Voyager that Chakotay says, the old intrepid ship. Something that kind of tying into, we had the discussion about the relationship, the potential for the JC. When Janeway says, I look forward to what comes next. And again, it's so beautifully written. Whether you want to have that mean anything on personal, professional level between them as friends, as co-workers, moving on forward, is it an implication on a more personal level, that there is more beyond, Janeway's never-ending state of duty, that, maybe something may develop on a personal level once they're done with this particular crisis at hand. I love the fact that the writers managed to weave all of this so naturally and so beautifully and completely, whichever way you look at all this, you can interpret it both ways. It works.
Right. I really, either way, I think it does say a similar thing, which is just that whatever does come next, she is ready for it. She is excited about it, and she's ready because she will face it with Chakotay. He is here now. They will face it together. however you want to interpret that.
Yeah, exactly.
And okay, another thing about embracing change, we've got to talk a little bit about Dal's personal log in the opening, because wow, have our crew changed. And it's just acknowledged outright in his log. We've been through a lot and it changed us and we have grown. And you see that reflected in when they're discussing the orders from Starfleet. Like, do they fight back on this or do they let Starfleet take over? Dal, I think maybe for the first time, certainly in a while, sees the bigger picture. And I don't know if that's the first time for him, but it's been the first time in a while, maybe this season.
Generally speaking, this whole beginning, you listen to Dal's log, it is so, thoughtful and mature. There is a sentence that kind of goes through what he mentions, and it accompanies by visuals. You have our folks sitting together. You see Janeway and Chakotay sitting together, and he says, "Home isn't always a place; it's the people you trust most." And again, it comes back to the subject matter of the found of built family, not necessarily your actual blood relatives, but the folks that you've bonded with through difficulty. And it's just beautiful. Again, the writing is I applaud the writers.
It is. It's so great. That sense of security this scene gives us too. It feels good, especially knowing how things are going to blow up.
It's very brief. Yeah, the sense of security is very brief, but nevertheless,
yeah, it's just a moment to relax and breathe and just be. But nevertheless, it was there, and I'm glad that the episode itself, the story itself, includes this moment, because sometimes I will criticize modern Star Trek for rushing from plot point to plot point to plot point, just action, action, action. They took a moment here, and I really want to appreciate that, just to put that out there. Well, how about we dig in to dissecting the pros and cons of turning the mission over to Starfleet, because there's so many great perspectives here. How about we start off with Jellicoe, just because he says those grating words to Janeway of, "You are too close to this situation. I've seen what it's done to you."
And it's
Excuse me?
It's a curious thing, because, on one hand, Jellicoe feels far, I don't know, what is it? Not kinder. Kinder is probably too good of a word for him. That, the way Jellicoe was, the Jellicoe that we saw in TNG. So it's like he's speaking in a very measured and mild manner, but yet he's saying things that are, they just, they rub you the wrong way. It irks me when he basically accuses Janeway of being emotionally compromised. Is she emotionally involved? For sure. Is she emotionally compromised? Well, I would argue no. And then, so he orders her to return her desk. Everybody gets reassigned. The would-be cadets are going to be taken off the ship and reevaluated. It's just sort of like it comes across as like, we have far too many issues already to deal with you lot. Oh, sorry, another crisis calls. And that's it, he's gone. So it is quite a contrast in that scene where you have, Jellicoe, who obviously he, like many other admirals in Star Trek before, he lives in the macro world. He's looking at he's looking at the bigger picture, but on a level where you might miss, the trees for the forest. And Janeway is still capable to operate on a level where I have a duty to my crew first. So that's quite a contrast right there.
Yeah. I don't know. You could agree with Jellicoe saying, yes, she's way too involved in this situation. I can see how you could justify that, but I really do think earlier this season, she's following Starfleet's orders until her hand is forced.
Yeah.
And then she really does do what she has to do. But prior to that, I mean, she's ordering the wormhole to be destroyed and whatnot. However emotionally involved she is, she's not letting that affect her decision making. So I disagree with Jellicoe.
As something that came up much earlier, like in the first half of the season, there was a moment where when we see Janeway being Janeway and operating. She's making the best measured decisions she can with the information at hand. As you said, until something else would happen and make her, go rogue for all intents and purposes, she was following, like, destroy Infinity. She was going to destroy Infinity. They sent it out into the, blue giant. So in this case, this particular scene that we're seeing, it's interesting to see that Admiral Janeway is the one not ready to back down from the mission. And we have Chakotay and Tysus and even Dal basically agreeing with Jellicoe. So
right? Didn't see that coming.
So I guess that is the challenge of where, like, you have this very intense mission. How, when, and whether do you do that? Do you make the decision to step back and say, okay, yes, this situation is bigger than I am, let somebody else get involved, or you keep pushing because you're the one who's in the thick of things.
Right. And it is interesting why Dal falls on the side of letting Starfleet take over, because there is so much at stake. And I think Gwen is at the heart of that movement for him. Like, he really wants Gwen to get through this okay. And then meanwhile, though, none of the rest of our crew wants to give up. It's their attitude is, we went through all of this just to stop. Are you kidding? They've never had to do this before.
Even Majel, of all the people, she's the one who's like, yes, wouldn't it be logical if, we started it, we finish it? So, you know what? But with all this, like all this to and fro with what Chakotay thinks and what Jellicoe wants, what the crew is thinking, all the discussions, considerations of what to do about the mission. Gwen is the only one to bring up what I feel is not the smallest elephant in the room. The fact that Wesley said that the 7 of them were important to this mission. We're talking about this whole, time paradox. If you recall in The Cracked Mirror, there is a moment where Jenkin says, how come this is happening just to us? And Chakotay just offhandedly said, well, quantum signatures are probably connected to this paradox, and that's why it's happening. It's the same thing. If time traveler tells you that you're important to solve the this time snafu, shouldn't be a question raised like, well, if we're literally dropping off Protostar in San Francisco, how's that going to work? How's that going to help with the time paradox if the 7 people who should be there are not?
Right. Which does raise that bigger question of...
So it's obviously not something that is happening because obviously the Protostar is still there, the Voyager is still in place, so our 7 crew are still in the thick of things. But had this not happened, had they followed Jellicoe's orders and everything moved as he ordered, we probably would have been in an even deeper problem than we are right now with the temporal paradox.
Right, and I don't know. How much faith do you put in the Department of Temporal Investigations? Because it sounds like, on paper, this is a difficult job that has a lot of moving parts that is better suited for them than our ragtag group. But you know what? That is not true. Nobody knows this situation better than our crew. So there's like a pro and a con there. Because nobody else at Starfleet, even with their greater resources, well, under a normal circumstance, maybe that if when they had their greater resources, that would be the alternative. Like, turn it over to them. They know better. They can handle this. There's more personnel. But that's not Starfleet right now. I mean, Jellicoe keeps saying they have so many crises on their plate. Well, what makes them think that they can handle another one? Even if the top brass think that turning it over will lessen the problem just because it'll be in quote unquote better hands, ultimately it's probably better that none of this matters because they have to act Voyager and Protostar. And it is a reminder that harkens back to what Dal said at the very top of the episode. They're on their own out there. And this is the sharp contrast to the safety he felt in his log with Starfleet and just being with his people, being back home and having that moment. But then on the other hand, Starfleet is not coming to their rescue right now. So all they have is each other.
Yeah. Sort of, this is something that I just thought that it's silly to say, given that, how much they've already been through. Training wheels are most decidedly off at this point. Speaking about how much they've grown, how much they matured. You can see through the entire episode, you can see them working on par with the Starfleet personnel. So, that's another thing about, Jellicoe being irksome, saying, oh, these would be cadets. They're literally working as, fully fledged crew members. Majel, when she says about the Nova Flyers, Commander Tice has unlocked the safety protocols. These are not for target practice anymore. Yeah, so that's it. They're fully part of the ship functions at this point. I mean, at this point, when we have that moment where we have to deal with the target lock, Del comes up with a strategy of how possibly to get the lock without things literally exploding all over, and Janeway's impressed. So, go with it. Seeing how much the things change, how the stakes have gone up in this season, there is a moment that it actually kind of made me laugh a little bit. The irony when in the very beginning, as Del is narrating what's going on, having the living construct removed from Protostar being literally like an asterisk, an insignificant mention. It's like, oh, yes, and then Starfleet removed the living construct. It's not, it's just a little blip.
It's not even a thing.
How far have we gone from, yes, there's a weapon that's going to destroy the Federation, all the way to, the timeline is unraveling.
Right.
things are much worse.
Season 1, that was the big baddie. That was the danger. And now here we've got this whole other
Just a little blip.
Just a little blip. Yeah. I want to walk back just a tiny bit on the whole thing of our crew working so solidly together. Starfleet has no idea how well they are doing this. Jellicoe is not seeing for himself just how well they are working together, how much they have become important and indispensable to this crew and this mission. And it reminds me so much of, say, management, and then the people doing the actual work beneath them, having no clue what it's really like in the trenches. So, I think Jellicoe maybe needs to stuff it because he doesn't have a full grasp on what he is talking about just yet.
Exactly.
Well, oh my gosh, this episode has so much, but I think we really need to wrap up. What are some final thoughts that you have?
There's more stuff coming. I mean, we would get an implicitly pretty suspenseful cliffhanger, and we touched upon that earlier. I mean, Ascensia got Wesley, and all this awesome time manipulation technology is born of his mind. I mean, she didn't come up with it herself. And so how much information did she torture out of him? How much did she damage him? Did he reveal the impending demise of the timeline? Not that I think that the Ascensia would actually care. That's not, as long as her ends are met, who cares about the timeline? So assuming that both our ships get out of the predicament after that shockwave, what are our chances to actually fix the time paradox now that Wesley's captured and not available? So there's more stuff coming.
Lot going on, and with Wesley being captured, that is a big question mark, isn't it? Because we know he's capable of some crazy timey-wimey things. We've hardly seen anything yet, and yet we know the potential for that is extraordinarily dangerous, and we know Ascensia will use it. We've seen our crew in dangerous situations before, but why does this one feel even more dangerous than what's come before? I guess it harkens back to the whole thing of how season 1 was basically an asterisk right here in this little teeny moment in this episode. Then maybe it's because our crew have come so far that, man, if they were to lose everything now, how tragic would that be? It's looking probably as low as it ever has for our crew. I mean, our heroes, Janeway can't get herself and her crew out of this one just yet. Voyager's situation is very dire. And so with this being a two-parter, I'm waiting to just strip down to the tank tops, get down to business, and let's see how it goes down, baby. I'm excited.
Part 2, yeah.
Woo!
So, we've reached the end of the show. So, before we go, we have one more thing to do, and that is to give you the special code you can use to enter the giveaway. You'll find the code only here, and the code is Mission Log Prodigy, MISSIONLOG PRODIGY. Now, to enter, you go to the link provided in the description of this episode, or look for it on our social media channels.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you've enjoyed our show, please make sure you like and share and subscribe to the Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, and you should, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
And next week, we will discuss Ascension Part 2. And cadets, don't forget to watch both parts of this story and send us your thoughts no later than Saturday, October 19th. We can't wait to hear what you have to say, and we will feature your voice messages at the end of our next show. Until next time, live lugs and proper, and go fast.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.